let's turn the time over to Chair Lear for Law and Licensing report and recommendations.
Thank you. We had several action items, beginning with item 12.2. This was R277-406, Early Learning Program and Benchmark Assessments Amendment. The committee moves that the board approve R277-406, Early Learning Program and Benchmark Assessments, Draft 1 on second and final reading.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor to approve R277-406, Early Learning Program and Benchmark Assessments, Draft 1 on second and final reading. Seeing no lights, those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed?
Item 12.3, R277-801, Services for Students Who are Deaf, Hard of Hearing, Blind, Visually Impaired, and Deafblind, an amendment and continuation. This engendered some discussion. The committee moves that the board continue and approve R277-801, Services for Students Who are Deaf, Hard of Hearing, Blind, Visually Impaired, and Deafblind, Draft 3, on second and final motion.
There's a motion on the floor as
Final
stated.
reading.
We have Board Member Earl for discussion.
Yeah, I just, if I understood, and I listened to the committee meeting, there's going to be some further dialogue, right? And we'll work with both USPB as well as other constituents and kind of, okay. I just wanted to, is Leah Voorhees the person that's overseeing that, or who is the?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no other lights, there's a motion on the floor that the board continues and approves R277-801, Services for Students Who are Deaf, Hard of Hearing, Blind, Visually Impaired, and Deafblind, Draft 3 on second and final reading. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Board Member Hymas is opposed. That motion passes.
Item 12.4, R277-915, Work-Based Learning Programs. The committee moves that the board continue and approve R277-915, Work-Based Learning Programs, Draft 4 on second and final reading.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor as stated, and we'll open for discussion. Board Member Moss.
Quick comment, and I don't want to bring a motion here, but I did note that the definition of internship means a high-quality experience where students are mentored by an employer for approximately 40 hours on-site during one course to learn about a particular industry or occupation. And I would just like to raise a point of discussion, not to derail this, but that we perhaps expand that to include some remote internship opportunities. And that's something I've been discussing with Vic Hockett, my capacity as the Talent Ready Utah rep. And so I think it's a chance to expand that opportunity for kids that aren't in immediate proximity to an on-site internship. Kids out in the basin where I serve, kids on the west side, West Valley, don't have immediate on-site access. So I think that's something that both the governor's office and Talent Ready Utah are interested in. Maybe we could double back on that. So just a point to raise. Thanks.
I would love, personally, taking the chair's privilege, I would like to see how that would look, and or maybe a hybrid of the two. I'm not, or options. So, thanks. I'm done.
Okay, so I'm trying to see if we had motions or amendments or anything in there, but the motion on the floor is that the board continues and approves R277-915 Work-Based Learning Programs, Draft 4 on second and final reading. Those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed?
Item 12.5, Educator Licensing and Preparation Annual. Oh, that's a, I'm sorry, that's just informational. The last item is 12.6, Board Policy 2004, Board Member Communications. This would be a new policy that a couple of committees I think have been working on. After lots of discussion, give and take, that was, I thought, very helpful and very informative, the committee moves that the board approve Board Policy 2004, Board Member Communications Draft 4 on second and final reading.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor as stated. Discussion. Board Member Earl.
Yeah, I have a motion, or an amendment to the motion, I guess.
Oh, okay.
I don't know, is Jeff in here? By chance have that, Jeff? maybe. I sent it out just a little bit ago. Just, first of all, I do like color coding, but it was hard to go through and read and figure out where we were. But I just feel like this needs to be simpler. And when I say simpler, the recommended language I have is striking all of 1 and 2, which are those sections, which most of it are already stricken. Should I just make the amendment? Am I already speaking to it? I'm not trying to, sorry.
I'd like to see it.
Yeah. And I did email it just recently to you, so you might have it on your
I
email.
think I got it.
I sent it to Board
Sarah Young
of
is around.
Education.
Probably I didn't get it.
So striking 1 and 2, and then adding, the board gives members the broadest possible latitude to speak, write, debate, listen, challenge, and learn while maintaining civility and mutual respect. Members of the board shall not engage in any activity that would be an abuse of official position, a violation of trust, or place others at risk for harm. And then keeping all of 2A, which has to do with confidentially private issues, but then striking the teacher, professional teacher part. And the reason why is I went through that, the bulk of that has to
Can
do
you
with
wait for 1 second? Do we
Yeah,
have a
sorry.
second
Sorry.
on this amendment? We have the language of the amendment?
That's what he's trying to.
He's
pull
trying
out.
to pull it up.
Because it's
Sorry,
hard to-
I always get,
But it's
Do you
hard to.
have, can you read what you sent to us?
I just did.
She did
Oh,
not-
you read, okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Oh, okay, sorry, I got kind of confused in
It's
the
okay.
But I just want to see
Yeah,
while
I
she's
want you to-
talking.
I do. I don't-
language. Okay, so we have Board Member Klein as a second? Oh, she left.
I wanted to see what one
What's
of you
that?
said before. That's why if you can just.
Second.
Oh. All of- I thought we hadn't had any problems. Oh, we did.
Why don't you go ahead and finish speaking to it since we're waiting
Okay,
for the
okay,
language? And
that's-
I can pull it up
Sure.
on my email. Hopefully everyone else can
Because
also
it
while we're
doesn't
waiting.
show- The problem is it
Yes,
doesn't
we
show what's
won't,
struck.
we won't take any votes until we can see all the language in the rule. But go ahead and finish your remarks.
I'll just
and
speak
we'll.
to a couple of pieces, and so that hopefully that can get up so Carol and others can see it.
I'm just very visual.
So I think, to me, it's just a broader, this is what communication should look like. When we start saying, well, board leadership is going to determine this, or so-and-so is going to determine this, deciding what's inaccurate or what's accurate or what is, we already have the ability to do that. The leadership already has the ability to make those decisions that we've already set up for them. To me, it gets concerning that, and maybe it's board leadership, not that I'm saying that that's the case, that, do you know what I mean, that put out inaccurate information or something. So it's merely stating, this is what it should look like. I just don't want to be restrictive to the point where everybody's worried about, well, have I just crossed the line on something?
Teachers.
Then the other thing, and I do have a question at the end that maybe could be answered, maybe Brian would be helpful for this, but in the third part where it talks about board member communication, and it says a member may not share pre-meeting materials with the public until such time the document that such time that the document or its contents are made public through the established process. If there is a policy or something we're working on and we wanted to engage with someone, let's say it was a licensing issue, or a policy with licensing that we are following and have been following, does that mean we can't take that initial draft policy and engage with maybe a licensing professional at the university level? I'm just wondering what the restrictions are on this. Is this to the point where board members, we just have to wait for whatever comes the week before, at least for me? Some of you are in leadership and it's a different situation, but 5 days before, and then I'm supposed to hurry and gather information, usually Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and have enough, you know what I mean, to act on it. So I have to wait till it's public to do that. That's my question there is this really makes it difficult to do my job. If we have something that's protected, that's different. And I can notify people if I'm engaging with them that this is protected. But otherwise, the communication is really limited to me.
Just to
So,
answer that question, we are opened up to back up, to see back up the same time board members are. I just actually learned this in our last executive meeting. I didn't even know, but I had never tried prior to then anyway. I just usually open it the week before when board members open it. Board Member Lear.
As long as we're speaking to this
remove
before we
C?
can really see it,
Okay.
I'd like to speak to a couple of Member Earl's points. I philosophically, in some ways, really agree with you, Jenny, that this could be simpler. My concern is, and has been as the committee has now looked at this for 2 or 3 or more months, is that we have a lot of history with this and some problems that made this brought this to the board's leadership attention, and some of those concerns, as I recall, came from staff, some came from other board members, and it seemed to us, because of those problems, that greater specificity was needed. And if we hadn't had those experiences, when I say we, I mean some of board members, some staff members, maybe this specificity wouldn't be needed, and I certainly rather it wasn't necessary. But I feel like it is needed, and to speak to one example of that, where you said, Member Earl, why do we need board leadership to interpret what is right or wrong or what this means? Because there have been board members who said, well, who says so? Or who is he to tell me what I can say or can't say? So it seemed appropriate to the committee, and apparently the drafter of the policy bringing it to the committee to say, we need to have a decider in place so that it's not a question of who says so. So I think the history of some concerns that other board members have had and staff members have brought us to this point of some degree of specificity. To your last point about confidentiality, I've wrestled with that too. I would have liked to have taken some of the materials that I knew and take it to another attorney or a friend or a colleague in a school district. I don't know if we've struck the perfect balance. But I do think there's something to be said for letting the board speak to issues before they're dispersed all over the state. So I'm willing to try what we have proposed in terms of appropriate confidentiality. And it's an on your honor kind of thing. And taking those concepts to other people, it seems would be appropriate, just not the exact language. In any event, those were my comments, and now we can see better what's being deleted and what's being substituted.
Can I speak to that? Well,
Board Member Earl, quickly, yes, and then we'll.
yeah, and I think actually as I'm looking at it, removing C, you still have D in place, which allows for that, the classified communications or very specific communications that shouldn't be shared. I just would hate to hamper us from even engaging as board members. Yet, and my question kind of comes, does staff, are they hampered in who they engage with in the public? And what I mean is different entities that they may engage with. And if so, then I'm just saying, I want to be able to function as a board member. And I can't do that if I can't engage with interested parties in whatever possible way. is staff also hindered from engaging with interested parties? Do you see what I'm saying? And is there a double standard here if that's not the case? Confidential information, we've got that outlined here, and that's great. But it's the C part that I'm not sure what that really means or how that impacts my engagement with others on policies that are important to my constituents and to educators and to families.
Thank you. I engage with stakeholders, but sometimes I don't have whatever's coming out in backup, but I can say, committee's been working on these issues, can I get some feedback? And then, so I have never felt hindered by not getting back up till the week before,
Well, I
till it's
haven't till
public.
now. I just don't know. That's what I'm asking. What
Yeah.
does this do? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I just don't know that it changes anything, other than if maybe we're having a draft circulated, then we wouldn't, email that out to 50 friends or something like that before it becomes public on public backup. That's how I understood it. This has been in our committee for so many
Right. And
months, like
can
ad
I-
nauseum. Board member
I'll let go
Lear?
ahead, other people. Well, let me
Or
just
Chair Lear.
speak to that for 30 seconds. I don't think we can control what staff does. They're controlled by their own set of ethical standards. This speaks to what the board does. So I'm not trying to control staff in this. I don't think it's a tit for tat or that kind of a situation. I think this speaks to what the board members believe are ethical standards for board members. So that speaks to your one question. I think this is a matter of respect for the board to say, we will not circulate drafts of things, and there has to be some good faith understanding built into this. I can't say that every single, I can't say how many words should be taken to somebody else for discussion and be in violation of that. I don't think that's the point. I think the point is we've tried to bring this down through committee work to it being reasonably specific, but also general and relying on the good faith of the board members and the ethical standards of board members. I think we've struck a good balance after, 4 or 5 months of discussion, and I think we should go forward with this and see how it works.
Thank you, Board Member Norton.
I think maybe Vice Chair Belknap was before me.
Oh, Vice Chair Belknap, I apologize. At the beginning of this meeting, I said to myself, look at the screen to see the hands. Please, Vice Chair
Very
Belknap.
small, we can hardly see her. So,
I'm the problem child. This,
She's very small.
I know, I'm just kidding. I'm making
this was
fun.
actually precipitated by information that was sent to the board and then was sent out publicly to other people to weigh in before it was even part of an agenda. And this way it keeps it, if it's going to be part of an agenda, then it keeps it from being, it keeps it to where it goes to the public when it's actually the accurate time to send it out. If you're working on something, it hasn't even been approved to be on the agenda yet, you can certainly continue to work on it, just as we have done over the last 6 months on this. So I don't think this does anything to change or hinder the ability for board members. I do have one question though, however, it's on line 59. It said a member may not share pre-meeting materials with the public. Why did, in committee, why did you change that to the public? And why would that differ and where you shouldn't be sharing materials? I'm curious as to why we added that.
I can, Chair, should I speak?
Go ahead, Chair. Leary.
I think, and I recall this being Member Davis, but I'm not positive. I think the idea is that committee members share it, board members share it. The point was it shouldn't be shared beyond committee, and we talked to staff members about the information. The idea was it should not go beyond those people.
Thank you.
Board Member Norton.
Yes, I have really enjoyed or appreciated the term that is used in this room frequently, that words matter. And for that reason, I would be concerned with basically eliminating most of what is said in 1 and 2 and just replacing it with the word abuse. I things like defamation or incorrect or risk of legal liability, I think are clear and specific. And I think this is a time where those kind of words really would be helpful. Otherwise, we're going to need to have quite a broad definition of what abuse would be considered.
Okay, thank you. I'll just say that we went the rounds on this, and Board Member Hymas brought this latest draft back to our committee, and it really has changed from where it has been, and I think it's pretty reasonable. So I'll speak to the motion and not the amendment, and I'm trying to do it in the middle, not at the end, because I know that bothers some people. I'm trying to put it in appropriately. Board Member Moss?
One final question on the on sharing, if I could, and I apologize, but I am a lawyer and have to get lawyerly when I think about what can I forward, what can't I. We're used to things like attorney-client privileged and classified and draft. Is there some indication in the materials that we would get that says this is classified as protected so we know not to forward it? Certainly drafts, I think we shoot back and forth and they're not quite ready for disclosure. That's kind of like a protected bill at the legislature and then it becomes public. But I'm just curious if this tells us what we can and cannot send. Certainly treating materials backup might be something that's within an agency and then it just became relevant to backup and it's out there if somebody took the time to dig far enough, but maybe they didn't and a constituent asked, hey, what are you guys thinking about for that policy that's up? Well, we're looking at a document that came from here and it's public, but is there a way to know what we're not supposed to forward and what we are? Getting real practical there.
Yes, thank you for the question. Director Van Holten?
Yes. So typically, as you mentioned, anything that's in draft form is not grammable, so therefore it is not something you would need to release, and that's what you're getting at here in a lot of ways is conversations that are happening with draft documents before they're put on an agenda and released to the public. They're not subject to grammar, and this is saying, and therefore you need to keep them within yourselves as board members. Things that are classified would be more of the things you discuss within an executive session. Those aren't, I don't believe we tend to put classified on that, but it should go without saying, hopefully, that any materials being shared and used in an executive session would be classified. We can also add classified and draft to documents if that would be something that would be preferred, to make sure that that's very clear for all of you to know what is not supposed to be shared out beyond the 15 of you.
I think something like that would be helpful, frankly. If we're doing this in a rule, potentially, whatever the vote is, if we're doing it in a bylaw that we don't want to policy, thank you, policy that we don't want to cross. You know, it's one thing to have our version of what's good practice, that kind of thing, but yeah, that could help so we don't cross the line if that's what the policy comes out.
Can we vote on Board Member Earl's amendment, and then would you like to make an amendment, Board Member Moss? Okay. We're just suggesting that to the staff to do that in the future. Is that what you're doing, Board Member Moss? Okay, that's fine. We have an amendment on the table. The floor.
Madam Vice Chair, if I could kind of walk through how this looks very
Okay.
quickly.
Sure.
Anything you see here highlighted in these gray purple bars is what is being proposed by Board Member Earl to be deleted. So all of subsection 1 and then inserting instead A and B. So A and B would be the new subsection 1 entirely. And then in subsection 2, her motion would get rid of C and D, keep all of A, and remove line 42 down to the word title on 43 for subsection 2, and then no amendments to subsection 3. So 54 and below is, there are no amendments.
Thank you. Board Member Chair Lear, your light is on, and
Just-
Board Member Earl,
just-
your light is on.
Not because I've been.
You're right, okay.
Can I just give,
A summation.
yeah, just a summation? I just think it provides clarity to me hopefully to you too, that we want the broadest amount of communication to happen, but we need it to stay within this framework. It's simplified. It's not messy or whatever. And the leadership, we already gave them the ability to do this. I don't think it changes that. The educator standards, there's a lot in there that do not apply to us because it's specific between educator and student. And then it also refers to UPAC. Now I'm wondering, I don't know how that would relate to me. Do you see what I'm saying? There's a section in there. So what part of this, we're putting that in there. And so I guess there's a lot of confusion as to the applicability of that. And yet we still have the Utah Public Officers and Employees Ethics Act. We have substantial requirements there. So that's the reason why on those, and just keeping things clear. So.
Yes, thank you. On students, a lot of board members do go into schools, so they do want to follow those between students.
You'll never be referred to UPAC. You're not a
But
licensed
some won't, you're right. Yeah, we've got an amendment on the floor. And can you put it to where I can state it? Where's the language of the? There is an amendment on the floor that Board Member Earl is going to read, so we get it right.
So it's strike 1 and 2, the board gives, and then it would be the board gives members the broadest possible latitude to speak, write, debate, listen, challenge, and learn while maintaining civility and mutual respect. Members of the board shall not engage in an activity that would be an abuse of an official position, a violation of trust, or place others at risk for harm. Keep all of 2A and keep the Title 67 part of B, and then keep section 3.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor as stated. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
No. Those in favor, please raise your hands. That is Board Member Moss, Board Member Hart, Board Member Klein, Board Member Earl, and Board Member Hutchings. Those opposed, please raise your hands. That is Board Member Booth, Board Member Straight, Board Member Hanson, Board Member Cannon, Board Member Norton, Board Member Hymas, Board Member Lear, Board Member Davis, and Board Member Huntsman, and Board Member Vice Chair Belknap.
Yeah, my hands are raised.
That motion fails. We have a motion on the floor. That motion is that the board approves Board Policy 2004, Board Member Communications, Draft 4 on second and final reading. Board Member Moss.
Could I propose an amendment?
Yes, please.
I would move to add in line 59, after which are classified, words which are classified by board staff as private or protected as already stated. And I'm open to certainly modification of that, but that's my suggestion.
There's a motion on the floor as stated. Discussion to the motion. And I have a question. From what I understood, staff say anything in draft form is considered classified. Would this change that understanding? Or would this just be a restatement of that understanding?
The latter. It would be a restatement.
So the staff wouldn't have to write the word classified all over the document. It would be understood it's
If it says
in draft.
draft, correct.
Okay. Any other discussion to the motion, to the amendment? We need a second. Board Member Hutchings. And Board
And I
Member
should
Lear.
speak. I don't have a problem with this. I think that the idea of the draft document is a little bit more nuanced and maybe a little more complex. I think the point is if the committee circulates draft documents under GRAMA, if a committee circulates a draft document, then it does become a public document. So the point of having a draft document and treating it like a draft is the nature of the protection. So I don't particularly, I mean, I don't have a problem with this change of wording, but I think the important thing to understand as board members is if we circulate drafts, then we make them public documents. We use them as working documents instead of keep them as draft documents. And I think that's the important point. I don't think that, and I'm not really technically sure if board staff can classify in the broader sense. I think it's more of a technical term under the state archives policies. But for our purposes, we know what we mean. And I'm the one that says words matter, but in this case, I am so sick of these words that I think we're going to be just fine.
Board Member Moss, would
If
you
I-
consider it a friendly amendment to add the words "in draft form," which are classified by board staff as private?
Certainly, and my intent by including the words by board staff is to allow them to give some kind of notice, as was previously discussed, to us. And that would help. I don't think it's required, but if they do it, then we would have a heads up. This is not to be shared.
I totally support that.
So you'd consider it a friendly
Sure.
amendment to add after the word
Certainly.
communications in draft form, which are classified by board staff. So we know that communications in draft form are classified. They are classified, whether there's a big watermark across the thing or not. Board Member Klein.
So my understanding is that it's classified until it is put on the public view of the agenda, correct?
That's my
And,
understanding, but
and drafts are added to that all the
possibly
time.
not. Director Van Holten?
So just a point of clarification, when something is in draft form and it states draft, it is protected under GRAMA. And if we share it amongst ourselves within the agency, including the 15 of you, it remains protected as long as it is draft. But if any of you sent that draft to a member of the public, it loses its protection under GRAMA. And that's why it's important, and I think that's what was really the intent of this language, was to make sure you all understood. We keep it within the agency and while it's in draft form, and then once it's done with draft form, that's when you can send it out to the public.
Okay. Just to clarify, once it's put on an agenda, on the public view of the agenda, it's out there. It's, meaning it's no longer
Yep.
protected because
Correct.
it's on the public view of the agenda.
Correct. Board Member Earl?
I appreciate that. That's the first time I've heard that. So I think that maybe that was the Debbie thing kind of by being, I don't know. I actually have another amendment after this is done.
Okay, do we have additional input from our staff? Board Member Hanson, why don't you go ahead and share while we're waiting? Whoa, wait. Director Van Holten.
So Ben is actually pointing out, Ben, maybe you can join me. The verbiage would actually change the meaning of the phrase and make it so that there would be an extra, maybe I should probably let you explain
May I?
better. Yeah.
Ben Rasmussen. I'm the grandma officer, so I've just been kind of paying attention with interest to this. Adding in draft form, I think you'd probably want to leave that out because you want any communications which are private, controlled, or protected to be something that you're not sharing. When you add draft form,
I see. Whether in
You're
draft form or
narrowing
final
that.
form or not.
right.
I see. Okay.
We don't have control of
Okay. Would you consider that friendly to take out the friendly amendment?
Doubly friendly.
Thank you. Board Member Hanson.
Yeah, I wondered if we could just have staff comment as to the feasibility of just putting something on there that says protected document or something so that we know when it's posted and able to go out to the public. I mean, if we make that part of our system, I think that would clarify things for everyone, and we'd know when it's gotten to the, well, when Ben does his grandma searches to see what is to go out, it will say protected on it, and it won't go out. And then when because we put draft documents on our, as backup all the time, and so you can't use the word draft, and I know we're cutting that out. But if, in the legal world, as Jim was talking about, if we had some kind of a non-disclosure agreement, or something like that, it would say private, protected, there'd be stamps that go on and designate the material as not to go outside of a certain confine. So what's the feasibility on something like that? I don't want to throw a wrench in things, but we use formats all the time on our documents.
So the question is, would it be possible for staff to indicate on documents what is classified and what is not? Can we hear from staff on the feasibility of that?
Yes, I get nervous speaking on the behalf of 300 agency employees, but I would say that adding on, hopefully everyone behind me isn't like shooting daggers at me, but adding on protected or something like that would probably not be too onerous.
Scott, you're not suggesting an amendment, you're just.
You're just
Just
saying
as
it would
part
be
of our
helpful.
policy or our internal procedures that we would do that. I mean, this would be fine. The language would be fine.
Please.
So I think it would probably be helpful to understand that a lot of this stuff is classified at the time that we get a request. The way Grandma works is the agency reviews classifications when we get a request from the public. I mean, I think that staff can certainly make a concerted effort to alert the board when something is sensitive or is something that is of a nature that it should be shouldn't be disseminated. But it would be hard to expect staff to know the classifications of everything that might fall under this gambit in advance.
Can we just not share stuff until it goes public? I mean, why does this have to be so hard? I think we've, yeah, what amendment do we have on the table? Let's,
So we just pulled the amendment. We're back to the original.
did we have a second to board members' amendment? Did we have a second to board member? Okay, Hutchings. All right, will you restate your amendment, please?
The amendment is that we amend line 58 to read communications which are classified by board staff as private or, and then continuing on line 59 as already stated.
Okay.
Did I mess it up?
Well, no, but we're hearing from our staff that it's, the feasibility of that can be difficult.
And well, and I don't know how you want this wording to be interpreted, but board staff wouldn't generally classify things. Generally, it's me and, as the records officer in consultation with the superintendency that would make classification
I think
decisions.
they were using classified in a non-tech.
Yeah, that's why it frustrates me, is because I think that this is being written in conjunction with Grandma, but it's not consistent with Grandma.
Would it perhaps,
Grandma's one piece of it.
Yeah.
Can we just say that we won't share the agency documents until they become public? Can we just say that? Is it,
Vice Chair,
yes, please.
could I maybe suggest another tweak? Rather than classified, just designated? Does that go to your?
That's clear.
That's, I'm giving an option. Either it's already classified and protected, or if board staff designate it that way, to give us a heads up. That's the intent. So maybe designated by board staff as private or are protected. I don't want to belabor it, but hopefully that gives us the clarity that's good from our staff.
What about the approach that Vice Chair Davis said, though? We're talking about things have to be kind of affirmatively designated. What if we do it the other way and just say until it's made public by posting on the website, then we won't share it? Then it takes the burden off of staff because something has to happen before it makes it, and it's clear. I mean, it's on the website, we can put it out.
Board Member Moss, do you feel that's a friendly amendment? It's a total substitute to your
I would be
amendment.
fine. Honestly, this was meant as an alternative so that it doesn't require board staff to designate every document. If it's already protected, then it's protected. If board staff choose to designate it as protected or private, that would give us a heads up. So I think that there are some, as other members have brought up, there's some discussion prior to going public where you've got things that are otherwise shareable, and they come up in our discussion, and have people ask about it. I don't want to die on this hill, and I don't want to
Okay.
belabor us past 4 o'clock.
But you want
So
to, you want to keep that
I'm-
amendment on the table.
Maybe we could just vote
Is
on the
it-
amendment.
Board Member Hanson, are you making a substitute amendment?
Yeah, I'll make a substitute amendment.
End it after
I'm trying to look at
anyone
this and see
outside
how
the
we do
board,
it.
and then, unless or until such time as the board, if you do it that way, that takes out all that.
So you
middle
could say, will not share or forward anyone outside the board communications which are protected under grandma or not, have not been posted to public facing website.
We have, we have a suggestion from our staff.
I was going to suggest just striking D and using E, because I think that's basically saying what you were suggesting, Vice Chair.
Are you comfortable with that, Chair, or Board Member Hanson?
I'm trying to read it over your head here, through your head.
Sorry.
Member may not share or forward anyone outside the board or board staff communications that are designated as confidential. So again, so what's designated as confidential? That's the problem. So that's the burden on someone to designate it as confidential, and
We just
I'm
want
trying to get
draft-
around
It
that.
should say draft materials. That, instead of all this designated confidential or private, it's the draft aspect of it that is the.
Are you comfortable with that, Board
Yes,
Board
yes,
Member
if that
Hanson?
said, instead of designated as confidential, if it said.
Okay, it would s-
Communications in draft form until the
Yes.
board makes the communications or contents public, that would be great.
This is really public wordsmithing, but can you write that down, Director Van Holten? Please.
Is there a problem?
What was just said there, that communication, let's see, a member may not share or forward to anyone outside of the board or board staff
Send this back.
communications in draft form until the board makes the communications or contents public. It's on E, it's down in E.
You still want to take out D? Is that,
They want to strike D, just don't do it for now, but just, and add in E. A member may not share or forward to anyone outside of the board or board staff communications in draft form until the board makes the communications or contents public.
Draft.
Draft, yes. A member may not share or forward to anyone outside of the board or board staff draft communications. Well, it already says communications in draft form.
Yeah, I know, I just felt like that was succinct. No, draft communications that are designated.
Okay, we're wordsmithing now, and it means the same thing, and I agree 100%, but we're not doing it. Okay, it's okay.
Involuntary utterance.
I agree. We have an amendment on the floor to strike D and to alter E to say a member may not share or forward to anyone outside the board or board staff communications in draft form until the board makes the communications or contents public. Do we have a second?
Second.
Board Chair Lear is a second. Seeing no more lights, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That passes unanimously. Now, now that was Scott's, so do we not need to go back to yours, Jim?
No.
Okay, so, thank you. Board Member Earl.
Yeah, so adding, I think as much as saying what we can't do, I think it is important that we articulate what we can do. After the first paragraph, just adding this piece, the board gives members the broadest possible latitude to speak, write, debate, listen, challenge, and learn while maintaining civility and mutual respect. And then we've got the rest of it there that spells out what you can't do. But I think important policy does articulate what is acceptable too.
Is that there over it? Okay. We have an amendment
Before
on the
one.
floor as stated. Chair Lear.
I don't disagree with the sentiment. I just feel like it's a bit contradictory to say exactly what you said in the broadest possible form, and then say, accept that we can't do this, we can't do that, and we can't do that. Which brings me back to my earlier comment about we would not be here if there had not been problems. We would not be here if staff members had not felt threatened, if board members had not felt threatened, if certain members of the public had not said that we believe this is unethical behavior. So I feel like philosophically, I embrace that amendment, Jenny, but I feel like we have, that ship has sailed. And we're more about helping our body understand what is appropriate in this moment. So I don't hate it. I just feel like it introduces an internal conflict into the whole section, the whole policy.
Thank you. Board Member Hanson.
Maybe introduce this as a hopefully friendly amendment, so it just says that board members may speak, write, debate, listen, challenge, and learn while maintaining civility and mutual
I'll take it as a
respect.
friendly amendment.
I think that cuts out the contradictory nature of it, and also, that's our job, is to do those things.
I'll ask. I did not get a second on.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Board Member Klein. Okay. Is that a friendly amendment now? So
It's a
that's
friendly amendment.
Okay.
So
okay. I agree with the sentiment 100%. I think it's covered in respecting First Amendment rights on line 4 and 5. But we've got an amendment on the board that adds board members may speak, write, debate, listen, challenge, and learn while maintaining civility and mutual respect. Please, those in favor, Board Member Hanson, your light's still on. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That amendment passes. We have a motion on the floor. The board approves board policy 2004, board member communications on draft 4 on second and final reading. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed?